Whenever I need to know about psychopaths who make suits out of human skin, I know just who to call. Kris Mohandie is a forensic psychologist with decades of clinical research and real-world experience with those among us who are prone to violence. Wow, Kris, I gotta say, why is Ed Gein not a bigger name, given that he was the inspiration for all those movies?
Well, thank goodness he's not a bigger name, because people like this shouldn't be big names. And thanks for having me on your show. I think that the issue, is that he was one of the first that was recognized as people were starting to study this. Obviously, there were serial killers before this, but in terms of the first wave, if you will, of those that were studied, particularly by the FBI's profiling unit, people like John Douglas. He was the first and represented the pattern that we see in these people, which is one of violent fantasy, often trying out that violent fantasy in different ways before moving to living human beings. And the stuff with the digging up corpses, going to people who've just been newly buried, and doing all these, terrible and disturbing things, that's part of the patterning we see. And eventually, for people that are serial killers, it's not enough. They have to move to living, non-consenting, human beings. So, he was a precursor to, what we're seeing. We started seeing in the 60s, especially the 70s, and unfortunately now into the present.
Yeah, I mean, the Dahmers and the Gacy's, they're infamous, but this guy kind of slips under the radar. And I got to ask you, I don't even know what label to put on this guy, or if it's possible. He robbed graves, he collected body parts, he murdered, he had freakish sexual fetishes. I mean, is this sort of the white whale for people in your world to study because he's just so complex?
Oh, I don't know that he's that complex. I think he's a classic serial killer who has a variety of perversions and paraphilias, which are disturbing, fixations on acting out against a non-consensual partner. So this patterning is disturbing, but it is pretty straightforward. It's a lot of violent fantasy in an individual who lives in his violent fantasy life, who creates all these things that were in his house to, relive those fantasies, have himself surrounded by what's stimulating to him, and then eventually kind of morphs into what he really wants to do, which is take lives. So, complexity, they said he was schizophrenic. Maybe he was, but they didn't really have the nomenclature, the descriptions to fit, people that were violent fantasy-based killers back then. He was found insane. Not sure that would be the case these days. He was predatory. He was acting on violent fantasy. And these days, maybe he had that kind of serious mental illness, but more likely, like you said earlier, psychopathic, with these urges, these cravings that he, gave into, these violent fantasies.
I'll tell you what, he would not get not guilty by reason of insanity today, based on the fact that he hid so much of his handiwork. And that usually connotes that you know right from wrong. Kris Mohandie, I could talk to you forever. Will you come back and talk to me again? Because I know that a lot of people aren't liking this series as much, and I want to dig into that in another segment. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.